Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a interest in item 4 and will be leaving the chamber. Thank you. Keonery.
I always forget that, sorry. That goes to my charities, my chosen charities. But can I thank all of you for your support, of those who donated prizes and those particularly who have donated their ticket monies to my charities. It is much appreciated. Thank you. Obviously, there are no plans for any further fundraisers because obviously it involves the public coming to them, and in this day and age we don't want anything to happen to anybody. So thank you and again for what you have done in the past. Agenda item 3, Chief Executive's communications. Do you have any communications to report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to reinforce the message that after this evening we'll hopefully not have to convene in person, and those people that have attended tonight, I'm glad that you've spaced suitably and hopefully we'll all stay safe.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, it's the M55 Link Road. I invite Councillor Karen Butley to introduce this item.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, the recommendations in this report are to divert anticipated business rates growth from the Blackpool Airport Enterprise Zone of up to £1 million to the M55 Link Road project. This link road is a top priority for Fylde, which is not being delivered soon enough by reliance on Section 106 contributions from the developer. Indeed, estimates in the report before you suggest it would not be open until at least 2030. The result is congestion on Queensway with long delays at rush hour and gridlock if traffic on Clifton Drive is hampered. All the efforts which have been made over recent years have been to identify funds from different funding bodies to accelerate the delivery of the road. The funds secured to date are set out fully in the report at Table 1. Fylde's contribution of £1 million was pledged in 2016, recognising our responsibility towards the economic health of the borough. The developer's contribution has diminished considerably from last time we met, as they are not in a position to commit significant funding ahead of house sales. It is this uncertainty over their contribution which has led to a great deal of delay whilst various other options have been explored. There is a shortfall in the funding, which you will see at Table 1, and Lancashire County Council and Fylde Council are being requested to make up that shortfall, hence our report this evening. The LEP fund has been on the table for a long time and is about to expire. Other funds have their own requirements and hurdles to jump over. The leader and I, together with the Vice Chairman of Planning Committee and our MP, Mark Menzies, have met regularly with officers and the Cabinet member from Lancashire County Council for a long time with a single aim to get parties and funders in agreement, legal contracts signed and the road built. Members will be aware that fibre optic cabling was laid by BT last year in preparation, and just last month the hedgerows have been cleared ready for building works to commence. In relation to the extra £1 million from business rates growth, we have already received £274,000, which will be retained in the M55 Link Road Reserve. The timing of further receipts is uncertain, even more so now given the outbreak of coronavirus, and therefore it may be necessary to look towards the funding volatility reserve in the interim to make up the £1 million until such time that business rates growth is achieved, if at all. The proposed terms of our contribution are set out at paragraph 35 to form the basis of an agreement. Turning finally to the recommendations, the legal advice referred to at point 4 has now been received, and it confirms that state aid rules are not engaged, and therefore, Mr Mayor, I propose to remove recommendation 4. I move the remaining 3 recommendations, and Councillor Fazakerley will second this proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Fazakerley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, colleagues, it gives me pleasure this evening to second these recommendations.
Have we got any speakers? Councillor Redden.
I'm patient. I think everything that needs to be said has been said, but as somebody that has been involved for a considerable period of time in these meetings, I think it's appropriate that I should very much endorse the comments that have already been made regarding this project. It's a project over a long period of time that we've witnessed. There's been a lot of scepticism, understandably, about progress and about whether this road will ever be built. But there is no doubt in my view that the meetings that I've attended, every effort by a whole host of organisations has been made in a very dedicated way to actually getting this deal over the line. And we are very, very close. You've heard the quote about the £4.78 million shortfall that partly can be closed by this contribution from Fylde. It may not be needed, but we have a particular time schedule that we have to observe, and it is absolutely necessary that we support these particular measures. If you talk to people in Fylde, there is no doubt it is one of the biggest issues facing this part of the country. Congestion, economic viability of the area, all of those things are part of what we have to gain or lose through these decisions. So I do urge members to support this particular motion. It is probably one of the biggest economic development decisions that will have ever been made in Fylde, and it's one that we must make. So I urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butley, is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this? No? Okay. Councillor Butley, do you want to sum up, or should we go straight to the vote? Right. So we'll go straight to the vote. Thank you. Nobody's asked for a recorded vote, so we'll have a show of hands. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous.
Yeah, unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. Right, the urgent agenda items. Pursuant to Part 5A, Section 100B, Paragraph 4B of the Local Government Act 1972, I am of the opinion, due to government guidance regarding the coronavirus pandemic, that the following items should be considered as a matter of urgency. So the urgent agenda item is the coronavirus contingency alternative decision making. And I invite Councillor Sue Fazakerley to introduce the following item.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, colleagues, there is absolutely no doubt that we are in a time of crisis, potentially worse than any experienced by those who have not gone through a world war. As councillors, we cannot just abandon ship and take cover. We have responsibility to the good folk who have elected us, and thus we need to make provision for the continued operation of our council and its essential services during this pandemic. Colleagues, the recommendations before you will ensure that this happens, and I sincerely hope that all members, irrespective of political allegiance or none, will support tonight's recommendations, which will facilitate the continued smooth running of our authority during this difficult period. Under normal circumstances, our system of governance requires members physically meeting to make decisions in a public forum. However, group leaders, in consultation with the Chief Executive, have agreed that in light of the latest advice from the government regarding the coronavirus pandemic, it is not advisable for the Council to continue to meet as we normally do, and alternative decision-making processes need to be introduced. Government advice is being updated on a daily basis and is at present voluntary, but this may change. Local authorities will be expected to make decisions appropriate to current national advice. And it is against this backdrop that the recommendation is to remove the requirement for person contact to protect elected members, employees, and the general public, and to operate within the spirit of the current advice. Thus, the Council is required to make arrangements for decisions to be made, and the most appropriate advice for councils such as ours is the delegation of decisions to officers, namely the Chief Executive, Directors, and Heads of Service, in consultation with the Leader, the Mayor, and the Chairman of the respective committees. This approach removes the requirement for non-essential social interaction and travel, and it means decisions could still be made were the town hall to close. The committee work plan could be pared down to essential items, allowing resource to be dedicated to essential services. The annual general meeting of the council, which cannot be delegated to officers, will be arranged in consultation with group leaders. Further details can be found, Mr. Mayor, in tonight's ordered papers. Colleagues, I am sure we all recognise these are challenging and worrying times, and Fylde Council is doing its very best to minimise the effect of the restrictions placed on our usual operations so that our residents do not suffer. The pressure on officers over the past few weeks has been great, and I would like to thank Alan and his team for their very hard work and additional duties with a reduced workforce and tight timescales. Mr. Mayor, I would like to move the recommendations, and I would like to add a third recommendation which is self-explanatory and has been circulated this afternoon and also this evening. So if I can just read the recommendations and the additional recommendation. Recommendation 1, that the Council delegate the following decision-making powers to the Chief Executive, Directors and Heads of Service, in consultation with the Leader, Mayor, Chairman and relevant members of the respective committees with immediate effect. Powers to take any decision on behalf of the Council which can lawfully be delegated to officers, subject to the decision taker, before taking the decision, having taken appropriate steps to consult the chairman and members of the committee which would save for this delegated power have taken the decision. Power to cancel council committee or subcommittee meetings. Number 2, that the Chief Executive reviews the alternative decision-making arrangements each week or more frequently as required in consultation with group leaders, taking into consideration the latest advice from government and appropriate agencies, to determine whether to revert to the normal committee procedures, and that the arrangements be additionally reviewed by members when it is next appropriate, taking into account that advice for a scheduled meeting of the full council to take place. And the additional recommendation to approve the following as reasons for non-attendance at meetings by any councillor for the purpose of Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. That is, illness caused by the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, any measure taken by a councillor in response to medical or official guidance in relation to the pandemic, and any cancellation of meetings in response to the pandemic. Mr. Mayor, I have a seconder for these recommendations in Councillor Peter Collins. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bazzackley. Councillor Peter Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second the proposal by the leader. Just wouldn't support the recommendations without amendment. Thank you.
Does anybody wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Silverwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some clarification, please, on the first recommendation. I understand that on the second one that the Chief Exec is reviewing it, alternative decision making on a daily, weekly basis. So flipping back to the first recommendation, really to say that as it stands now, if it's voted through this evening, that the Council delegates the following decision-making powers to the Chief Exec, Directors of Health, Heads of Services, etc., etc. So can I just ask why in that recommendation it doesn't say the Leader of the Opposition? Thank you.
Councillor Bazzackley, would you like to reply to that?
It's not a question.
Oh, sorry. It's Is anybody else who wishes to speak? No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a valid question, and it's not a question I can answer at the moment. I was of the opinion, as we have had discussions on this over the weeks gone by, that the Leader of the Opposition would be involved in these discussions. I have no objection to the Leader of the Opposition being involved.
Sorry. Is there an amendment being proposed then, Councillor Silverwood?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, if I may do so. The wording of that the recommendation number 1, an amendment to that it includes the Leader of the Opposition, please, when making decisions. I haven't got it in writing, but I'm sure we can scribble it down if we have to. I think I've got a seconder with Councillor Gill.
Councillor Gill, you...
Yeah, I second that motion to add in Leader of Opposition within the Leader, Mayor and Chairman.
She's self-isolating, isn't she? She's self-isolating.
Anybody who wishes to speak to the amendment?
I just want to clarify, so we haven't got it written down, but as I understand it, it would mean that recommendation 1, prior to the italics, would read that the council delegate the following decision-making powers to the chief executive, directors, heads of consultation, heads of service in consultation with the leader of the opposition, mayor, chairman, and relevant members of the respective committees with immediate effect, and then it goes on. So I understand that's the amendment.
Does anybody wish to speak to that amendment before we go to the vote? No. All right. Okay, we'll go to the vote then, thank you. All those in favour of the amendment, please show.
I think it's clearly carried.
Yes. Right, that's clearly carried. Thank you.
So now that's a substantive motion.
Right, so we'll go back to this.
Councillor Collins.
Councillor Collins.
I'm very sorry, Mr Mayor. The leader of the opposition is in self-isolation at the moment. So I'd like to propose another amendment that the leader of the council or the leader of the opposition aren't available. They would be replaced by the deputy leader and the deputy leader of the opposition.
I'll try and add some clarification though, so we can move it on. This is consulting with people who are not here anyway, and these people may be in self-isolation. They would only be unavailable if they were uncontactable, because nobody's going to be here in person. Any engagement or interaction will be digitally somehow or teleconference. So I'm unsure as to how that's improving on. They have to be completely unavailable, I guess.
No, sorry. It's just a contingency in case anybody becomes incapacitated at some point in the future. We don't know how long this thing's going to last or how it's all going to pan out.
Councillor Collins, I can't see how. Right, thank you, Councillor Nolte.
Just to, I feel that is covered with the end bit of it where it says and relevant members of the respective committees. So, yeah, obviously, ideally, it would be the leader of the opposition, but it can be a relevant member, can't it? So I think that's covered.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Fazackley wants to sum up before we vote.
Right, Councillor Fazackley, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. It's been said before, really, that we anticipate these consultations to be done over the phone or online or whatever other electronic means, and it won't necessarily involve the physical presence of the leader of the opposition and myself or whoever, Uncle Tom Coblin, or that may be called into these meeting substitutions. So I would speak against that amendment of Councillor Collins. I don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
It's not been tabled as an amendment, though. It was, what was it, Councillor Collins? Was it just a suggestion?
Well, it's not going to get voted through. So,
Are you going to withdraw that then?
I'll withdraw it.
Right, thank you. Okay.
Go to the vote.
Right, we'll go to the vote now. Thank you. which is the subjective,
3 recommendations.
to the 3 recommendations as suggested here. So all those in favour, please show. That's unanimously carried. Thank you.